The path of Brahmacharya is so far removed from today's culture, at least the way that I grew up in, hip hop culture. My heroes were guys like 50 Cent, Tupac Shakur. I had life-size pictures on their wall. Very different than the way our guest today grew up. I'm really excited to introduce you to Bhaktimarga Swami, also known as the Walking Monk. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
I was raised in the 60s, by the way, so different kind of music, but still party mode.
Party mode. I think it's just like the mode of partying changes, but the desire to party is there throughout all the ages, I think.
Well, that's why I really was gravitating when I was much younger, 20, towards Krishna consciousness. Why? Because this was a different genre of partying.
It was still a party, though.
It was still a party. You're happy. There's song, there's dance, there's exchange between people. There's real nice food, all this kind of stuff, and you didn't sort of wreck yourself internally, or it was very enriching and empowering. That's why I became a monk so many years ago.
Well, it's a path that I call you last of a dying breed. Like, even when I'm telling people, I'm like, come meet, it's a last, like, you don't get the opportunity to hang out with someone like you. It doesn't come every day. And so I think it's very important. And for people that are brand new to this channel, this is a men's channel. Generally, we talk lots about the practice of semen retention, which sounds crazy to a lot of people. And if you're brand new to the channel, I do invite you to subscribe and check out some of the other videos on the concept. The reason I wanted to talk about Brahmacharya is because, again, it's not every day that you actually get to sit with someone who's lived as a monk. And specifically, I want to explore why Brahmacharya, from a Vedic perspective, is relevant in today's world, as well as how it directly helps us with our spiritual path. Before we get into that, though, I do want to introduce you a little bit more formally. So Bhaktimarga Swami is known as the Walking Monk. He's been a Hare Krishna monk for over 40 years. I love the name The Walking Monk because it's very relevant to what you've done. So I've got some countries here. In the spirit of pilgrimage, he has walked across Canada, the United States, Israel, Iceland, Guyana, Trinidad. Ireland. Guyana, Trinidad, Mauritius, and the Fiji Islands. His book, The Saffron Path, which I'll leave in the description below, is available on Amazon, which tells both of his adventures as well as great spiritual lessons. And it's inspired by this book, the Bhagavad Gita, which had a tremendous impact on my own life and eventually meeting you. And by the way, he's the one who gave me the name Nakula Das, so that's right. He's the reason people call me Nakula. And the Bhagavad Gita talks about lust as well, and has some things around that. So just wanted to once again say thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, and especially at the beach here.
Yeah, it's a nice place. All right, so we're gonna talk about Brahmacharya. I want to give some context or like a background to modern culture, where we're at. So here's some stats, and I'd love to get your thoughts on these stats. So a survey was done, and a study came out showing that 11% of American men have identified themselves as addicted to adult content online. 11% of men, and that's not including casual users. That's actual classified as addiction. That's a huge percentage of the population. From webroot.com, we've learned that for every second in a day, 28,250 users right now are watching pornography. Over $3,000 is being spent per second. So it's a massive economic engine. Billions and billions, possibly even trillions of dollars. And 68 million search queries each day, which is about roughly 25% of the internet searches, is for adult content. So about 25% of what people are looking at when they're online is adult content. What is your take on the situation we're in and how we are maybe perceiving intimacy?
Well, we're definitely going through what's called the pop culture, and pop in Sanskrit means something not so good. Means sin, right? Okay, to be offensive. To be offensive to what? Well, to people in general, to yourself, to your loved ones, to your sex mate, family, anybody. And it just means over-sexualization, overstimulation. And we live in a society that's controlled pretty much by corporate people. Whatever makes money, it's okay. But maybe it's not okay from the point of view of moral, stability. And so we find ourselves caught up in this system where we're really trapped and stuck into all kinds of addictions that are basically harmful to us psychologically and physically in every which way. You're talking about semen retention. Well, semen for a man is like it's like gold. I mean, we have great stories in the Bhagavad Purana about like Shiva, who was generally retaining a semen. But then once when, this is an interesting story, when Vishnu, who's male, transformed into a beautiful female, Shiva sort of lost his retention, and the semen was spreading out all over and turned into gold. So it's a vital juice, I guess you could say, that we need to hold sacred and not to squander it and not to be so wasteful about it. I would say when we say the pop culture, it's a waste culture. Like everything's just disposed, everything's disposable. We take something, we use it and just throw it out and ready for another, let's say another way. So I guess when it comes to the sex culture and the whole sex revolution, people are always looking for new ways to engage in this kind of affair. And when we speak about Brahmacharya, which is really a practice that comes from ancient cultures, such as what we find that has roots in India and the Orient in general, there's great advantages to protecting yourself from overindulgence in this area. So it's Brahmacharya. When you break down the wording, acharya means to be a teacher, to be like a guide, and Brahma refers to spirit, the spiritual energy. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us that there are two energies, and one is matter and the other one is spirit. So how much time do we dedicate towards the spiritual side of life? And if we were to do surveys on that, I think it'd be quite low.
Sure.
And since I was a kid growing up, there was a lot more, let's say, attendance to spiritual functions, whether it was church or whatever, the synagogues, but that has been reduced drastically and replaced by, these other activities that you listed.
Well, I was going to say, do you think that there is a dichotomy there of or a relationship maybe between the fact that as a culture we seem to be going less and less spiritual, more and more into the material pleasures and sensations? Do you think as we lose one, there's the opposite sexuality then becomes the new God in a way?
Yeah, most definitely. The thing that people have always benefited from by spiritual practice is that there's an incredible longevity. There's stability, there's safety, there's an inner peace, which you can't be had through sexual stimulation. It really has a beginning and it has an end. It's very abrupt, and people are caught into these, habitual practices. They just kind of jump from one situation to another, kind of like a rabbit.
Sure, yeah.
And rabbits also multiply rabbits go to their holes and they multiply like anything. And so it's we're talking about getting a little cultured here, and to be cultured means to expose yourself to those things that are going to be wholesome, and allow you to live longer and to live happier and so on like that. That doesn't seem to be the direction that we're taking in this modern world.
I appreciate saying the idea of a rabbit, right? Because people say, "Oh, you do it like a rabbit," right? Right, really quick. Right? And so I just appreciate the rabbit idea.
Just because where I'm based in Toronto, and of course I travel a lot. But there's just the rabbit population is accumulating like anything. And so I was just reminded of that image. You guys are really getting around.
Yeah, they're indulging.
Yeah, but here's something that's interesting. People somehow are, we all know through, modern day practices, people are more indulged in sexual activities and fantasies, and there's less children. The
Yeah.
byproducts are less.
Yeah.
So, the byproducts always bring on responsibility. So that lack of responsibility is also denigrating us.
Right.
It's bringing us, it's demoralizing us.
Well, I would say largely too, sex is presented. You mentioned like this idea of going around like rabbits, being being out there, and in a way, like I grew up in the culture, say like hip hop culture, that's glorified, right? It's almost like a badge of honor, you know. I was actually talking to a young guy at the gym today. He came up to me and he was chatting, and he said, what you're doing is very difficult, promoting what seems to be going away from the culture of hookups. And he's in college, and he was telling me that a couple of his people he goes to school with, they know each other's, they call it the body count. How many people, right? Oh, I've got 20 people on my body count, or 20 women, or 25, or whatever the number is, right? But it's like a badge of honor. I guess my question is there a natural, or let's say base instinct that drives us as men to want to have, because I've definitely fantasized about that in my younger days, right? My wife is recording, so she knows, right? She knows this guy, right? she knows, right? But it's like I'm very open to be like, there would have been a time in my life been like, oh yeah, the more the merrier, right? So, and then, so is there something in us that pushes us towards that?
Yeah, the drive itself, it's natural. But what's also natural is the discipline, like control. That's also, I think most women like strong men. And when men are weak and just like mushy,
Sure. Yeah.
going around all over the place, I don't think that's attractive for women, really. Like strong women want strong men, and men who can hold themselves, contain themselves, and be dedicated and loyal to that lady who can bring about joy to you is just something that is not part of the pop culture.
No, it's not.
So I think the propaganda should switch. We want a happier kind of group of people. I mean, I'm just going to quote from our guru, Srila Prabhupada. Like he came from India in 1965 September, and he ended up at Butler, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
He spent 1 month there before he went to New York and kind of really dug in and mingled with people who were very thoughtful. He was interviewed by the Butler Eagle. It was the newspaper, and his message was very strong and profound. He said that in order for Americans to be happier, they should pay more attention to their spiritual life, or the reverse. If Americans pay more attention to their spirituality, they will be happier. So happiness comes in so many different ways. If you want, again, like longevity, you want things to prolong, then you have to look to the spirit, because spirit always implies something that's persistent, that's continuous. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. But when you're talking about cheap thrills, I think about, Janis Joplin and the big brother in the holding company, and the album, which I like the music, you're a hip hopper, I'm into that, cheap thrills. So we're living in the world of cheap thrills, something that you can't be proud of, really, honest. Like, where does real pride come in? It says, these are my children, this is my wife, these are my grandparents. These are our friends. We have a big community. And as with the breakdown of the family, with all this sort of like promiscuity going on, you can't boast that anymore. It's like it's lost.
Well, it's almost looked down upon sometimes. You even made fun of, oh, you got a wife, you only got one? Right? It's kind of like that culture again, where it's very like, there's this pride in being promiscuous, and that is where you're.
There's pride in. But pride comes really more in discipline, You know, if a guy is disciplined, you know, if he goes to the gym, you take pride in your body, you know, but you have to extend that a little bit more. You have to go beyond just the physical body and being a strong individual to be able to do Herculean things. Yeah, there has to be this what we call tiaga, let's say strength in being able to control your senses and have a focus. You know, our attention span has become so weak, so lessened to the point it used to be like a few seconds. Now I don't know where it's going to go,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the danger of it all. So I see, you know, we now live in a multicultural world, and, you know, you're talking about surveys and observations. I'm making my own observations, and I'm seeing that people who come from a more disciplined background, they conquer.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about with a sword. They mean they have strength. They have solidarity. They have unity, you know. And it would be nice to go back to that again, you know.
Yeah.
They have children, you know. What's wrong with children? Why do we hate children? What is this like? It's a war against having babies, which is a natural consequence of having sex.
What about rhetoric like that there's just too many humans on the planet? Do you buy into that?
Not necessarily. Our guru certainly did it. There's lots of, we live in Canada. Oh, okay. Oh, Canada. Lots of that. We need, there isn't a problem there. There isn't a problem.
Okay.
I mean, really, it's not an issue. And you know, when I go to weddings, and I do attend them, even though I'm a monk, I usually give a little talk and say, hey, you two are a great couple. You're very spiritual. You know, you're caring people. Of course, they don't always work out.
Yeah.
You know, they don't always pan out to be successful. I would say, have some children. You know, have a good number of children. You know, it's going to bring the maturity out of you. It's going to make you a better man and you a better woman, because there's a lot of sacrifice involved. It's not so much about me anymore.
Right.
The sex culture is all about my stimulation. What about, you know, doing what's natural? It's not natural to have sex all over the place and not have children.
Yeah.
Think about that. I mean, condoms don't grow on trees. We just walked through the forest. It took 7 kilometers. I didn't see one condom there. I didn't see the pill growing out of the tree. You know, so why don't we be natural and let children come into the world, and then you grow from that. It is a sacrifice.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to, like I said, like it's sex without responsibility.
Yeah.
Sex is for pleasure, not for babies. I think that's really the overall message. And that's why, you know, you see some of these stats, and pornography has heightened it. It's just this downward spiral. And most guys at this age, you know, 9, 10 years old, they're being exposed to some really hardcore stuff, like right on their phones. It's so accessible.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even maybe you growing up, it wouldn't have been that accessible.
No,
you had to go to like some seedy store, or like kind of put your hood on or something.
Yeah, the glossy magazine would be on the shelf way up there.
Way up there. You're like
not reachable.
Yeah, you don't want you would be embarrassed. You don't want anybody to see.
You know, I say the whole sex industry, whoever's running it, you know, whether it's through tabloids or whether through magazines or screen, you know, film projects, they really don't give a damn about you.
No, well,
they really don't. They have no empathy whatsoever for. They're just into consumerism. It's just a few people who live high off the hog, and they're just not interested in anybody's real, you know, ultimate well-being.
Yeah. So, I think yeah, you know, it's something you know, what we're also like advocating for too, and going to get deeper into is you know, educating government bodies about this as well, because I think that governments could step in and at least like what we did with cigarettes, right? You have to put warning labels. You have to educate the public on actually what is the danger of smoking. I can see us doing the same thing with pornography, and I think that there are a lot of new educators and people coming around, because there's tons of science to show how damaging it is, and then there is a rhetoric though, like going on in the mainstream, that goes directly against, you know, things that I would be saying about semen retention and reserving that, saying that it's healthy and that men should be doing this. And that
Yeah.
it's a normal. Do you have any thoughts around like the normalization
Yeah,
of
I
this?
mean, we would, like our guru, Srila Prabhupada, he would say, there's no problem with sex life. It's just regulated. And it's really for, a partner. Or in some cases, our tradition holds that if a man is very resourceful, he may have more than one mate,
Right.
Like in the case of the Maharajas in the past,
Yeah.
was allowed, female population tends to be a lot greater. So when you look at the figures, makes sense if a man is resourceful and he can look after several women and lots of children, so be it.
Right.
It's not a problem. But I think what really is critical here is that we need to get back to some of the old traditional values and get back to that discipline and and thrive and thrive. And if we want productivity, you don't get that from weak men.
No, that's exactly it.
You want men who are strong, who are determined, who are very focused, and who have good values, and they're loyal to their employer, whatever. Though that isn't that what everybody wants,
Yeah.
So but that's diminishing, drastically. So you want to things to roll out on the assembly line, well, so to speak,
Yeah.
well, you have to have strong people in there,
Oh,
with very
100%.
strong values.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that on the hike. It's like as men get weaker, the economic engine of that society gets weaker,
Mhm.
right? And there's this whole rhetoric that men and women can do the same thing, but I've seen that that's not true. We are as men workers, and can, as if we're strong and disciplined in our focus, we also see a benefit on the material level. Something that I talk about to guys to motivate guys and educate. I speak about retention on many levels. Say, first of all, your motivation, you'll just notice you don't need to sleep as much, right? Your motivation, your focus, your clarity of mind. And there seems to be this natural progression into some spiritual knowledge. So for example, there's some YouTubers that I've watched, and they started off by practicing, what's called no fap. So staying away from pornography, staying away from masturbation, right? And, these no fap challenges and such. And as I've seen them over the years, they've become, whether they take on a Christian label or a spiritual label, they find some spirituality, some avenue, some way to express a more spiritual side through the practice of retention or refraining. So I kind of want to, for this piece of our chat, kind of go into the spiritual aspect of specifically, maybe what Krishna teaches us. What does Krishna say maybe in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Vedas about lust specifically and how we should approach it? Or
When it's not regulated and controlled, it's your worst enemy. He's very blunt about it, but when it's controlled, it can be a best friend. Same thing with the mind. It's in chapter 17. Krishna talks a little bit about the mind and the discipline of the mind, and how to achieve that and to stay focused is that you have to detach yourself from the world of sense gratification. That immediate, let's say, stimulation. Get away from that. Move away from that. So one of the major principles in yoga,
right?
Dharana, just get away from that kind of culture and associate with people who have a lot more to give, who are a little more refined.
Yeah.
So get away from the party animals. I hate to say that.
Yeah.
And get into the association of people who know how to party in a more what we call sattvic way. Get away from the beer. Get away from all the stuff that weakens you.
Right. Yeah.
That rots your gut. That brings on all the physical, psychological weaknesses. Go for strength. But for peace of mind, you have to distance yourself from these things, It might have to be gradual, and maybe you have an idea of the step-by-step procedure. I think the key factor is you got to be in the right company. You have to have the right association. That's going to make all the difference. And in Sanskrit, we say sadhu sangha. Get into the association with people who have got that peace within their lives, that have been able to embrace it, And that means you just have to, break away, divorce yourself from that which has weakened you.
If somebody was watching this and said, I'm interested in Brahmacharya, I would like to live like as a monk, maybe even just for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Two-part question is, first is, what are the benefits? Like, why is Brahmacharya promoted as part of the path for serious spiritual seekers? Like, what about distancing ourselves allows us more self-realization or to get closer to God?
Well, if you start from scratch, let's go back to babies, okay? For young boys, it's really good for them to have a lot of play, have a lot of time out, be very physical, because boys are, and studies have done that young boys, they learn a lot by being physical, being out in the world and doing sports, learning how to lose the game as well as win the game. And passing the puck or the ball, whatever it is. There's a lot that comes from that, but a big part of the training when you're a young man growing up is to abstain, just to remain celibate until you're ready. And what does a woman want? Usually they want stability, they want someone steady, they want someone strong who's emotionally can handle, any situation practically. And you can do that when you practice celibacy. And it's, in one way I would say, you have no right to go out and be foolish and frivolous until you're able to be responsible. Don't touch any bodies until you're good and ready to take care of the, even if you decide not to have children, to help deal with the psychological, factors that go along with it all. Yeah. So you have no right, honestly.
No, I think I've recognized that in my own life. It's like that, and I know Prabhupada would say this: sex without responsibility is irresponsible in a way. Teaching sex without responsibility is very detrimental in our society, and I think that's largely what's happened. Sex is now just a pleasurable thing. It's a fantasy thing.
Oh, can I tell you something?
Of course.
So when I was in high school, it was grade 13. We had 13 grades, in Ontario, and the sex education came into the picture, and it wasn't what I expected. I was thinking that, how do you maturely handle this appetite?
Right.
Like it's like a big feast. Okay, how do you can eat, but how much should you eat?
Right.
Control yourself, right? So, well, what I found extremely interesting is that us students, us naive, and we were part of the whole sex generation culture.
The 60s, right? Free love and
all that kind of stuff. We're just seeing what you can do sexually and get away with it.
Sure.
What you can do that's going to be cheap and easy, which holds very little bit of responsibility behind it,
Right.
So personally, I found it was like the approach was not wholesome. And I was raised like a, spiritual Christian tradition.
Yeah.
And I felt it was not wholesome, it's not healthy, and I didn't think it was going in a good direction. So the end result is that.
And that was.
Well, in 60s, 65, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a turning point where people start to get divorced and they start to do, all the jokes or sex jokes, and even by stand-up comedians, it was all about it. Everything changed from that point on. And, so I just think, I hate to say, like a hummingbird goes like this towards the flower, and then it goes backwards. Sometimes you have to go backwards. You have to retreat sometimes.
Right.
In dealing with the enemy, and the enemy here is the lust factor, and take some tips. Get some strengths about you, so you can know and go back out there in the world of struggle, of challenge.
One thing that I noticed practicing semen retention and putting more regulation in my own life is the ability to then give up other compulsive behaviors. And there's a line in the Gita where Krishna specifically refers to lust being kind of like this root cause, this idea that once we let lust take over, that there's this whole trigger effect
Oh yeah.
that begins, whether there's anger, frustration,
Oh
memory
yeah.
loss. Could you speak a little bit to, do you, in your experience, would you say that lust is the reason that we tend to go away from spiritual life or values or family?
Well, it certainly has a lot to do with it. Uh, Connected to unrestricted sexual activity and fantasies is that, the gambling, the drinking, the drugs, the prostitutions, and so many and diseases that go along with it, and the anxiety, and the need to see lawyers, and the need to go to doctors. You wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can
There's a
spare
lot
yourself
cost.
about. There's a whole domino effect that we have to consider. So we should just go back. That's why I said the hummingbird. Go back to some of the old values and embrace them. And this life of experimentation, let me put it in plain English words, it ain't working out.
It's not working out, definitely.
It's just not working. Again, I refer back to like some of our strongest men that we read about in the Vedas from India, like Bhishmadev. He was the strongest of the warriors, and he made a vow of celibacy. I'm not saying that's not for most people. It isn't for most people. Hanuman is another example.
Yep.
He's adored. Everybody loves the guy. They love him. They adore him. He's like a god. He's to be worshipped, and they love him. He's got the body. He's got the sentiment. His mood is one of service and loyalty to Ram and to the people. And saving Sita, the great goddess, it was all about protection of the females,
Yes.
and so he's idolized, because he had it all down. He had all the qualities.
Well, I think when we look at more like the men or heroes of back in the day, there was definitely a greater emphasis in chivalry and heroic. Thank you. And strength. Now we have like mainstream, men wearing dresses and such, and it's just what it is. Like, it's just a very different picture, right? To what we grew up with, right?
Yeah.
Or at least what we see then to what we're growing up with today. Very different picture.
Yeah. So, I oftentimes judge people, if I could use that word. I observe people on their strength of their loyalty. And I remember when I was walking across the U.S., I was walking through some of these towns where famous actors were born and raised, and one of them was James Stewart.
Okay.
So when we came to James, now he was born somewhere in the Midwest. He was somewhere in the Midwest. I can't remember which one. So I looked him up on my phone, and I said, well, how many times did he get married? How many ladies did he fool around with? And because he was like a leading man, right. And he had the profile of being the all-American boy.
Okay.
And he is great. He's a brilliant actor, and when you see him, he's so wholesome. And I looked him up because they had a museum in that town, and the local airport was named after him, James Stewart Airport, right? So I looked him up and I said, oh, he's married to the same woman for 45 years, Thought, well, hallelujah. That's my hero, when it comes to the film stars. And, he had the leading ladies, Kim Novak and Grace Kelly and all the biggies, from the women's side. But, he didn't get taken away by that.
Yeah.
As far as I know. I didn't read any novels, but I just thought that it looked like he was in a good position. So we all need to look up to someone. We need role models, and I think that's key.
Yeah.
To find in life, to find someone who is it. Isn't Hanuman great? Because you read his stories, wow, what an incredible personality. And people have like little murtis of him in their homes, and they have a little shrine, and they offer a little incense to him. I think those kind of things are really good for guys to get into, like a sense of looking up to someone,
Well, I think
who carries that those strengths. Yeah.
Well, maybe like I said, like I started off by saying, my heroes, right? 50 Cent and Tupac Shakur, because it's natural that we look up to somebody, heroes, people that we're going to mimic. But I think what we've lost is how powerful that actually is, and those images become of who we're going to be as men.
Right. Yeah. And, I mean, in our tradition, we don't limit ourselves with Jesus. It was a very strong person. I remember it was Mary Magdalene and how he dealt with her and the way she saw him. You're not like a regular man ready to exploit me. And there's the Buddha, these are like celibate masters,
Yeah.
So instead of masturbation, master your senses,
Yeah. I love it. That's going to be our highlight. It's going to be you going, instead of masturbation, master your senses. I love it.
Then you are actually a master.
Then you're a master.
Otherwise,
well, isn't that what the word Swami's master? And Goswami.
Master over the senses.
Yeah, Goswami's a master over the senses.
Yeah.
Right?
It's kind of like the Sanskrit word for like what a monk is.
Yeah. And is it, when people hear the monk, for example, a Goswami, I tell my guys, I said, our aspiration is all to be Goswamis. We should all strive to master our senses at the highest levels we can. Is that exclusive for a monk? Most of my guys that are connected with me are family life. They're either married or how does one translate the spirit of Brahmachari into family life?
Yeah, I think it can easily be infused. It's just a matter of training and learning the benefits, being educated on the benefits of that. Let's say abstaining. We're talking about abstention. And that over a period, I think it's very helpful. Like we have some programs in some of our ashrams where you could be a monk for a weekend. A monk, that's a big deal for some. You mean no sex for a whole weekend? Oh my God.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's it's crazy.
Yeah, but you have to try. Let people have the experience of a different kind of a pleasure, or more wholesome one. Like we went hiking, and doing some of the manly things, some that give you strength, and so I think that's very helpful. We're not suggesting that people be monks. We want children, but there's going to be a small section that will be. And in our tradition, we say that you're not a monk for life in general. We have some exceptions like Narada Muni, but most people, they settle down with a nice woman, a companion, and they share that time. And there's going to be a small percentage, that will take sannyas. That means after the wife is looked after by, after he's done his job, and say like children are looking after her, he might just become a wandering mendicant and take sannyas and live real simple, a little bit dependent on the kindness of others, but maybe work without a bank account, just, as we've understood what a monk is traditionally, a wandering mendicant type of thing,
That's what
it's very rare. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm celibate throughout my whole life. I have no regrets about it.
Yeah.
I personally feel that I've done everything in the past. I've been I've been a mother, I've been a dad, previous lives. I feel very fulfilled. I don't need to go that way. And wherever I go, there's families, there's children, there's people my age, there's men and women younger than me. I just feel it's all family, a universal family.
You mentioned that you've done you've done all of these things in other lives. I put it out to my community. I said, if you had the opportunity to sit with a monk and ask him anything, what would you ask him?
Okay, all right.
So,
let's see what they have to say.
I know, yeah. So there was a few that came up. We can't read them all. There was a bunch. But there was one that said that, and this specifically came up. So Chris Smith said, "Did you know your purpose before you reincarnated into this plane of existence?" So I guess piggybacking off of what you said there, do you have recollection of past lives yourself, where you could be like, oh, I fulfilled these things?
Yeah, to be honest with you, no. But I feel I have a sense of what I was, the spirit of where I was at before.
Okay.
And that was spirituality. It was like a life of simplicity, a life of humility,
You
responsibility.
felt
And
really,
yeah, I was swept away by
yeah,
spirituality.
you were in your
spiritual things.
20s when you became a monk, and I remember you saying in other conversations, it was like a glove fit. Like
Yeah,
it was
it was just
like,
a perfect fit.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so you believe that's coming across, and I know our philosophy says like it's coming from past lives.
Sure.
So you're sensing like that this life
Absolutely.
you're at this stage of this journey where that sannyas was
Yeah.
very simple, quite easy for you to fall
Yeah, it
into.
was just, I just slid in there. It was natural. And when I grew up as a kid, I was raised spiritually, yeah, and of my own volition, I just liked going to mass before going to school.
Right.
I felt this is where I belong. This is the soft world, the world of peace, and that shanti. And that's what I wanted. And so when I came and met Krishna monks, I felt, well, they're talking about the same thing that I heard about when I was young. When I was a teen, I also sort of pulled away and started to experiment with different things to see what's it really like, what's everybody talking about.
Yeah.
But I just naturally gravitated back to that space of gravity and joy, stability. And so I felt that this is what I was doing in my past. The first day I spent in a full day in an ashram or monastery, I felt I've been here before. I've been doing this. This is for me.
Amazing.
Yeah, and even though other people had an issue with it, like my parents,
Yeah.
they said, well, I just try to compromise. I said, I'm doing this, and I might be disinterested, and I can always pull out and go back into the secular world. But I didn't.
You were like, I'm here.
And eventually they saw I was happier than all my peers.
Yeah.
They were having marital problems or drugs or whatever it is. And I was the happy chappy out of the whole bunch of them,
We were singing Hare Krishna.
chanting mantras, eating great food, philosophizing and all those, and doing community work. It was just very fulfilling,
Couple questions and then we'll wrap up. Thank you so much for your time. Ariel says, how can I forget past sexual memories? So he's talking about impressions in his mind when it comes to...
It's something that Arjuna raises in the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
When Arjuna, the great warrior, is talking to Krishna, what about these the residual stuff from the past? Well, Krishna just puts it very plainly. He says, Parang drishtva nivartate. It's Sanskrit. It means take up higher pleasures, more sublime pleasures, more of that spiritual nature. And then it means that these lower tendencies will be less of an issue. Oh, yes, they will pop up, like pop goes the weasel. They're like all weasels.
Yeah.
And don't take weasels too seriously. But do take seriously that which gives you intense joy, gives you kind of bhava, a kind of an ecstasy. And I think most people, they feel the best, most at home, when they're in the role of giving. When you're giving someone, whether it's just teachings, lessons like what we're talking about, you feel good. I feel great right now.
Yeah.
I feel even better than jumping into the lake and going for a swim, which I like to do. And it's in giving that you feel joy, So whatever you've achieved by conquering over, or like say reducing at least those sensual tendencies, it far outshines any of these other things that have been there. Yeah. And I would just say to our friend here, that don't live so much in the past, don't live too much in the future, live more in the present. The Bhagavad Gita discusses 3 energies. And when you live very much in the past and thinking about, the stimulations, the fantasies that were there before, I think it was quite nice. And it was nice, but there was a lot of baggage that came along with it.
Sure, yeah.
Look at it realistically.
Don't
be a dreamer. Come on. So the past is what we call tamagun. It's in the mode of ignorance. That's one of the energies. Mode of passion means when you're so futuristic, you got all these plans, these exploits. I'm going to have all these women, blah, 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 all these kind of things. Don't even go there. Forget it. But rather work with what you have. I'm healthy. I'm strong. Maybe I've got some issues. Work at that. I have a dedicated partner. I have maybe children. I have my friends. Cherish it, embrace it. That's living in the present. That means the term is sattva guna, mode of goodness, being in the present, being in the moment.
Amazing, thank you. So I'll do a couple more. Some really good questions came up. One was how to. This is from Faith. How to hold inner calm during frustrating moments.
I think one technique that really helps a lot is doing some mantra meditation, like what some people would consider downtime. When you're frustrated about certain things, take a breath, take a deep breath. Why do you have to react right away? Why do you have to shout out? Why do you have to exert anger or bring out your ire? Why not just calm yourself? I'm trying to be a monk now. I'm trying to be civilized.
Right.
I'm trying to be mature. I'm trying to be a man.
Yeah.
I learn to control myself here. And take a deep breath. And in a situation like this, I would actually just look up at the sky. I'd study the clouds. And that sky is a beautiful blue. And I could very quickly become appeased and gain a sense of peace just by doing that alone. This is very practical.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Taking a deep breath, looking back, lying on the sand, or just get out of that damn house.
Go for a walk.
Go for a walk. Go for a forest bath. Those kind of practical things. And chanting the mantras, like the ancient mantras, like the Hare Krishna mantra is very, very helpful.
So mantra, taking a step back, mantra meditation or prayer in some way, and then also like just taking a step to admire natural creation, something beauty, something that would just allow you to be more sane.
Yes.
And then respond as opposed to just reacting from a place
You don't
of
have to
frustration.
respond so abruptly.
Yeah.
How has anybody ever been helped through that technique? And I would also look at, what are you eating? What are you consuming? And how often and how many times, like stay away from those heavy sugars, stay away from those spicy things that have, that makes you more sexually stimulated.
Yeah.
We're already
I'm already enough of that.
we're already horny. We're already horny. So I don't need to heighten it more to another level.
I don't need that.
Exactly. I don't need more spice.
We'll take this last question. Actually, you met him, Dina Chaitanya. I think you met him in Mauritius. He sent a picture of you two because he's a student of mine in the group. Anyways, he asked the question to you: how do I become a clear channel for the divine? So, how do you become a clear channel for God to work through us?
Well, by good actions and by good deeds, being very dharmic. Dharmic means follow the codes that you're supposed to follow, Like in business, be an honest business person. Don't cheat, Let that people will pick up on your genuinity. They'll see that here's the real McCoy. Maybe I'm old when I say that.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah, the real McCoy. I feel like I just brought my cowboy hat.
Just simply, be honest in your dealings and clean, and people will pick up on the vibration very easily. So follow your dharma, follow your codes. If you're a Brahminical person, sort of like an intellectual, priestly, kind of caring, counseling kind of person, then do what you're supposed to do. Be confidential in your endeavors and your dealings. When it comes to somebody who's more of the mindset of a manager type or leader, then be a good leader, be a good example. Be caring, consider everyone. Not just show partiality towards one group or just to your family. So Dharma, it's a key word. I would suggest anybody who's, trying to get improve their life in this area of this subject with the addictions and so on. Listen, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make a firm change. I want to be what they call dharmic. I want to be righteous in what I'm doing. And then when you are righteous, you are naturally via medium. You are a clear channel in which God can work through. So it's
follow your nature, stick to the plan.
Yeah.
I think there's I heard consistency in there, being able to stay steadfast. And like you said,
definitely honest.
Grounded, honest. Don't try to gamble or swindle your way into situations.
Don't take shortcuts, Don't try to rob a bank and think there's no karma that will follow you.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, come on, don't be a criminal. Follow the laws of nature, Work in harmony with all that's around you. Show respect.
Last question. If somebody's watching this and they're like, I would love to be a monk for a weekend as you tried, or for a year, or I'm curious more about spiritual life and I'm inspired by the walking monk, what would be their next step to actually reach out or connect to explore that as an option for them?
Well, I don't mind if I could talk to anybody personally, and I could listen to see what their issues are, and then maybe offer some advice, what they can do, and yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. If you want to get your copy of The Saffron Path, I'll leave it in the description, a link below. It's a really great book and I said, not only do you have the stories of him walking, but you've got a ton of spiritual lessons with them, as well as I'll leave the link to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And this is a book that made a tremendous difference in my life. I know you've spent 40 years educating and teaching people about, 50 years, of educating people about the knowledge within this book. And Prabhupada's purports are just absolutely amazing. I recommend all of us, check it out. And no matter what religion, I know on this channel we have guys of all different faiths. We're very open. It's just a matter of exploring and taking wisdom from where you can get it to apply in your own life. Maharaj, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending this time with us and doing this interview.
Thank you. Thanks for choosing this great location right by the beach.
That's right.
Where you can clear your head.
We're going to eat now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and we'll see you on the next video.